Before we begin, a quick note. The opinions and analysis shared on Truth Seekers are our own interpretations of published research and should not be used as medical, financial, or professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals for decisions affecting your health or well-being.
And with that out of the way, welcome to Truth Seekers. I'm Bill Morrison.
And I'm Alex Barrett. Today is March 16th, 2026, and we're talking about... Right, hands up, who's eaten something sweet, felt a bit foggy an hour later, and immediately thought, that's the inflammation? Because I have absolutely done that.
Let's get to the truth. Oh, same. Every single time.
And the wellness internet is right there, ready and waiting to confirm it for you.
Immediately. Here's exactly what the sugar did to your brain with a diagram.
It is. So the claim we're looking at today is everywhere. Health blogs, hospital websites, your aunt's Facebook, all saying the same thing. Sugar is secretly causing inflammation in your body. That inflammation is triggering brain fog and memory problems, and the whole disaster is also making you gain weight. And it's presented like it's completely settled science.
Which is what caught my attention. Because when something gets described as settled science, that's usually the exact moment I want to look very closely at what's actually settled.
So let's talk about why it sounds convincing. Because it does. The story goes, you eat sugar, your blood sugar spikes, your body releases insulin, inflammation follows, that inflammation activates microglia, the immune cells in your brain, which produces brain fog. It's a neat chain. It has mechanism. It has jargon.
It has microglia, which, honestly, is a great word. And look, none of those things are invented. Those are all real biological processes, which is actually part of the problem. Because you can string real things together into a story that the evidence doesn't actually support.
So what does the evidence actually support?
Okay, so we went deep on this. The biggest piece of research is a 2024 systematic review and meta-analysis from Queensland University of Technology, lead author Kerry Gillespie, published in Nutrients. And on paper, this thing looks like it should be definitive.
Right. 77 studies, 17,346 people. That's a very specific number.
It's a very specific number, which I appreciate. Multiple age groups, and they're specifically asking, what does sugar actually do to cognitive function in healthy humans? Not in sick people, not in diabetics, in healthy people.
That's exactly the population the wellness claims are targeting.
Exactly. Now, here's where the structure gets interesting, and I want to explain this properly because it matters. They split those 77 studies into two types: observational studies, where they're watching what people eat over time and seeing what correlates, and experimental studies, where they actually give people sugar and test what happens.
Right.
9 observational studies, 65 randomized controlled trials.
Okay. And the observational studies? All 9 of them found an association between higher sugar intake and lower cognitive function. Every single one. Which sounds like case closed.
It does. It really does. But, and the researchers themselves say this explicitly, correlation is not causation. 8 of those 9 studies adjusted for multiple variables, but residual confounding is still sitting right there, unaddressed.
Because the people who are drinking a lot of sugar sweetened beverages are also, on average, the people who sleep less, exercise less, eat worse overall, and are often in lower socioeconomic groups that have worse health outcomes for about 15 different reasons simultaneously.
Exactly. The sugar might just be tagging along with a lifestyle rather than causing the outcome. So you look to the experimental studies, the 65 RCTs, to actually test causation. That's the whole point of them.
And you'd expect those to show the harm.
You would. And here is where I genuinely had to stop and reread, because nearly all of those 65 trials were testing something completely different from what the wellness articles are claiming.
What do you mean, different?
They were testing what happens to your cognition 10 to 15 minutes after you consume sugar. It's called the glucose facilitation effect, short term, acute, right after ingestion.
Okay, and the finding is that sugar actually improved immediate memory recall in the short term. Small effect, but statistically real. Hang on. So the controlled trials that exist found that sugar helps cognition briefly.
In the short term, yes, because glucose is brain fuel. That part is completely real. The delayed recall, measured later, showed no significant effect either way. But more importantly, there are essentially zero long term human trials testing whether regular sugar consumption over weeks or months actually damages cognition.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm hearing this right. The experimental evidence that exists was testing a completely different time frame, found the opposite of the claim, and the thing the wellness articles are actually claiming, long-term cognitive harm, has never been tested in controlled conditions at all.
That is basically it, yes.
Huh.
The researcher's conclusion, and I want to get the wording right here because I kept almost paraphrasing it badly. They say the independent impact of added sugars on cognitive function remains unclear, and that what's needed are tightly controlled, long term, randomized trials, which do not yet exist.
That is the kind of conclusion that never makes it into the headline.
Never once.
Actually, you know what this reminds me of? The coffee episode. The one where the study was measuring a short term stress response, and wellness sites were reporting it as coffee causes long term disease risk. Same basic move, isn't it? Measure something acute, make a leap to chronic harm.
Yes, completely the same structure. Measure the acute physiological thing, declare it evidence of the long term scary outcome, and nobody reads far enough to notice the gap.
The gap being roughly the size of a lorry.
A large lorry. Okay, so now what about inflammation? Because even if the cognition studies are weak, if sugar clearly causes inflammation, the story still has some legs.
Right. The inflammation is supposed to be the mechanism, the bridge between eating sugar and ending up foggy.
So this is where it gets genuinely complicated. Animal studies, mostly mice on high fructose diets, do show real inflammatory responses, activation of specific pathways, increased pro inflammatory proteins. The mechanism is biologically plausible.
Right, and this is the thing about mouse studies that used to drive me absolutely mad when I was covering health. Every few months, there'd be a press release. Scientists find X causes Y. And you'd read it, and it was 12 mice. 12 mice in a lab, and somehow that becomes scientists say you should never eat X again.
The translation is instant and total.
And I get why it happens. Researchers are excited. The mechanism is genuinely interesting. But the distance between this happened in a mouse and this will happen in you is enormous.
And often in both directions. Sometimes the mechanism that works perfectly in mice does nothing in humans. Sometimes it works the other way around.
Anyway, mouse brains, not human brains.
not human brains. So when you move to actual human trials, the picture falls apart pretty fast. There's a 2016 study by Kuzma and colleagues, normal weight and obese adults consuming fructose, high fructose corn syrup, or glucose beverages for 8-day periods. They measured C reactive protein, interleukin 6, all the standard inflammation markers.
And
No significant change. None of the beverages meaningfully moved the inflammation markers,
that is actually quite a finding to not appear anywhere in the wellness coverage.
right? Some other studies do show small acute effects on inflammation, but they're inconsistent, dose dependent, and Kimber Stanhope, who's been reviewing this literature for years, published in Nutrition Reviews, says explicitly that clinical diet intervention studies in healthy people that definitively prove sugar increases disease risk, absent weight gain, and independent of caloric intake, are just not in the literature.
So the chain the wellness articles present as fact, sugar causes inflammation, inflammation causes brain fog. At the human level, the first link is inconsistent at best,
And the second link,
doesn't exist as a studied outcome at all.
which actually, and I'll be honest, you caught this before I did when we were prepping, brain fog isn't even a clinical diagnosis.
It's not in any diagnostic manual. It's a symptom cluster: fatigue, poor concentration, memory issues, word finding difficulty, that was formerly characterized primarily through long COVID research. It's a real experience, it's just not a defined clinical entity.
And there is literally no human study that measures brain fog as an outcome of sugar consumption. Not one.
So the wellness articles are claiming sugar causes something that no researcher has ever actually tested sugar against.
Attribution bias dressed up as mechanism. You feel foggy, you had sugar an hour ago, your brain connects the dots, the internet validates the connection, but the connection has never been tested.
Now, and here's where I want to push back a little because I think we need to be careful.
Go ahead.
Because when I say the chain hasn't been demonstrated, I don't want it to sound like sugar is fine and everyone should carry on. There's a different question, which is, why does cutting sugar make some people feel noticeably better?
Right. And that's real.
It is real. So I keep coming back to this 1995 Duke University study. 42 women, identical calorie controlled diets, one high in sugar, one high in complex carbohydrates. No difference in weight loss, no difference in mood, no difference in concentration between the groups.
Okay, but I want to push on this one a bit.
Push.
42 women, 1995. That is a tiny study, and it's 3 decades old. I don't think we should lean on it too heavily as a rebuttal when the thing we're criticizing is people leaning on inadequate evidence.
That's fair. It's not my main point, more that it's a data point consistent with the broader picture. The broader picture being that when calories are held equal, sugar itself seems to stop mattering as much.
That I agree with. And Stanhope's review actually makes this point directly. She writes that there are no studies where people were given blinded, ad libitum diets, meaning they could eat freely, formulated to ensure both the high sugar and low sugar groups consumed comparable amounts of everything else. That study has never been done.
So when people cut sugar and feel better, which again is real,
More likely, they're just eating fewer overall calories. Because sugary drinks and foods are easy to overconsume, they don't fill you up the same way. It's not that sugar has some unique metabolic evil, it's that it's a very efficient way to accidentally eat a lot.
right. And that's actually a meaningful distinction for someone who's genuinely struggling, tired, can't focus, gaining weight. If they've been told it's the sugar, cut it out, here's the mechanism, and they do cut it out and still feel terrible,
because the actual culprits haven't been addressed.
Exactly. Sleep, stress, exercise, B vitamins, iron, magnesium, any of which can directly tank your energy and concentration.
And that is the real cost of the oversimplified story.
Okay, so I want to put something to you because we talked about this beforehand and I don't think we fully agreed.
The framing thing.
The framing thing. You think the most important finding here is the experimental trials showing sugar briefly helps cognition rather than harming it. I think the more important finding is that the actual claim, long-term harm, has never been tested at all. And I think those are different stories.
They are different stories. I find the first one genuinely fascinating from a data standpoint because it's such a clean reversal of expectations. The science that actually exists says sugar helps briefly, not harms. That's striking.
It's striking, but I worry it becomes a distraction because someone could read that and think, oh, so the science is mixed, when actually the science is not mixed. The science has simply never addressed the main question. No one has done the study. Mixed implies there are results pointing in both directions. Untested is a different situation entirely.
Okay, yeah, you're right that those aren't the same thing. I think I was getting excited about the data reversal and slightly losing the bigger picture.
Which is that the central claim, we know exactly what sugar does to your brain and body through this specific pathway, is not supported. The pathway is partially plausible, partially untested, and partially contradicted.
Right, so here's where we land. Reducing added sugar is probably a genuinely good idea for most people, but almost certainly because sugary foods and drinks are an easy source of excess calories with minimal nutritional payoff, not because of a proven inflammatory cascade destroying your brain.
The claim that sugar is the hidden cause of inflammation, brain fog, and weight gain through a specific biological chain, at the human level, the first link is inconsistent, the second link doesn't exist as a studied outcome, and the actual claim has never been put to a proper, long-term, controlled trial.
The observational links exist, the animal mechanisms exist. The controlled human trials either show no effect or simply haven't been done.
So next time you see a health claim with a very tidy mechanism, sugar causes this, which causes that, which causes the other thing. Two questions. Is this observational or experimental? And has it been tested in humans over a meaningful time frame?
And if the answer is observational and not really tested long term in people, which is the honest answer here, that is not settled science. That is a hypothesis that is still waiting for its study.
Which is not as satisfying as sugar is poison, cut it out and fix your brain.
But it is considerably more true.
And honestly, at this point, I'll take true. Right, that's all for today's dive into the data. Just remember, everything we've discussed is our interpretation of published research and shouldn't replace professional medical advice.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with health or mental concerns, talk to your doctor, not just us data nerds on a podcast.
I'm Alex Barrett,
And I'm Bill Morrison
and we'll see you next time.
on Truth Seekers,
Until then, question everything.
but verify with data.